First, they came for your wood burner. They told you it was dirty. They told you it was polluting. They slapped fines of up to £1,000 on anyone using the wrong fuel. But that was just the warm-up act. Now, the government is coming for the main event. They are coming for the white metal box in your kitchen that keeps your children warm and your water hot. They are coming for your gas boiler. The United Kingdom is sleepwalking into a heating crisis that is going to cost the average homeowner £15,000 and leave millions of people shivering in their own homes. The target date is 2026. The weapon is the Future Homes Standard and the Clean Heat Market Mechanism. The replacement? A piece of technology that costs 4 times as much to install, costs twice as much to run, and, in many older British houses, simply does not work. It is called the heat pump. In this video, I am going to expose the great boiler ban deception. I am going to explain exactly why the government is trying to force you to rip out your reliable combi boiler and replace it with a noisy, expensive box in your garden. I will break down the spark gap, the economic reality that means switching to a heat pump will double your monthly energy bills even if the government gives you the unit for free. I will reveal the truth about insulation requirements, where you might have to spend £20,000 retrofitting your home just to make the heat pump function. And I will explain the boiler tax that manufacturers are already passing on to you, inflating the price of gas boilers to punish you for not switching. You must watch this video until the very last second. Do not click away, because in the final section, I'm going to give you the exemption checklist. There are specific loopholes and technical reasons why your property might be legally exempt from these targets. I will also discuss hybrid systems, the secret middle ground that lets you keep your gas boiler as a backup, which the installers don't want you to know about. If you leave early, you might panic and spend thousands on a system you don't need. Stick around to save your money and your sanity. Let's get into the heat pump trap. To understand the magnitude of this disaster, we have to look at the British housing stock. The UK has some of the oldest, draftiest and least energy-efficient housing in Europe. We love our Victorian terraces, our Edwardian semis and our 1930s builds. These houses were designed to breathe. They were designed to be heated by coal fires and later by high-temperature gas central heating. A gas boiler is a beast. It takes water and heats it to 70 or 80 degrees Celsius. It blasts that scorching hot water into your radiators, and within 20 minutes, your freezing cold living room is toasty warm. It is fast, it is powerful, and it is responsive. A heat pump works on a completely different principle. It is essentially a fridge running in reverse. It extracts low-grade heat from the air outside, even when it is cold, and compresses it to heat water. But here is the catch. It operates at a much lower flow temperature. A heat pump typically produces water at 40 or 45 degrees Celsius. That is not hot. That is tepid. It is the temperature of a bath that has been sitting for 20 minutes. If you pump 40-degree water into your existing radiators, your house will not get warm. It will just stay slightly less cold. This leads us to the first hidden cost, the radiator tax. To make a heat pump work in a normal house, you cannot just swap the boiler. You have to rip out every single radiator in your home and replace them with oversized radiators. I'm talking about radiators that are 2 or 3 times the size of your current ones. Do you have the wall space for that? Do you want your living room to look like an industrial plant room? If you don't change the radiators, you have to install underfloor heating. That involves digging up your concrete floors, laying pipes, and screeding over them. The disruption is massive. You are talking about moving out of your house for weeks. The cost of the heat pump unit might be subsidized, but the cost of ripping your house apart is on you. Then we have the insulation trap. A gas boiler can mask a lack of insulation. If you have a drafty window, you just turn the thermostat up. The boiler powers through the heat loss. A heat pump cannot do that. If your house leaks heat, the heat pump will run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to catch up, and it will never reach the target temperature. You will be cold and poor. To make it work, you need cavity wall insulation, loft insulation, and potentially external wall insulation. Have you seen the cost of external wall insulation recently? It can cost £15,000 to clad a semi-detached house. So before you even buy the heat pump, you are looking at a renovation bill that could buy a new car. Now, let's talk about the 2026 deadline. The government calls it the Future Homes Standard. From 2025 and 2026, gas boilers will be effectively banned in new build properties. If you buy a new house, you will not get gas. You will get a heat pump. This sounds fine for new buyers, but it affects you too. Why? Because the supply chain is shifting. Boiler manufacturers are being told to pivot. They are being hit with the clean heat market mechanism. This is a quota system. The government is telling companies like Worcester Bosch and Vaillant, for every X number of gas boilers you sell, you must sell Y number of heat pumps. If they miss the target, they get fined. So, what are the manufacturers doing? They are not stupid. They are passing the fine on to you. They have introduced a boiler levy, a price hike on gas boilers to cover the cost of the fines they expect to pay, because nobody wants heat pumps. So, even if you decide to stick with gas, you are now paying an extra £150 to £200 for your new boiler, purely to subsidise a government policy that is failing. It is a tax on staying warm, but the biggest lie of all is the running cost. The government and the green lobbyists will tell you, heat pumps are efficient, they are 300% efficient. This is technically true. For every 1 unit of electricity you put in, you get 3 units of heat out. Sounds great, right? A gas boiler is only 90% efficient, so surely the heat pump is cheaper. Wrong. You have to look at the spark gap. This is the difference in price between a unit of gas and a unit of electricity. In the UK, electricity is historically about 4 times more expensive than gas. Right now, as I speak, electricity is roughly 24 pence per kilowatt hour. Gas is roughly 6 pence per kilowatt hour. Do the math. If electricity costs 4 times as much as gas, but the heat pump is only 3 times as efficient, your bill goes up. You are paying more money to be less warm. Unless the government radically changes the electricity pricing market, which involves decoupling electricity from gas prices, something they have promised but failed to do for years, running a heat pump is financial suicide for the working class. Let's discuss the grant scheme chaos. The government knows this is too expensive, so they introduced the Boiler Upgrade Scheme. They offer you £7,500 off the cost of a heat pump. It sounds generous, but let's look at the real numbers. A full heat pump installation, including the water cylinder, because remember, you need a massive hot water tank again, goodbye space-saving combi, new radiators and piping, costs between £14,000 and £18,000. So, even with the £7,500 grant, you are still finding £7,000 to £10,000 of your own money. Compare that to swapping a gas boiler, which costs £2,500. Who has a spare £10,000 lying around during a cost of living crisis? And that is assuming you can even get the grant. The budget for the scheme is capped. It operates on a first-come, first-served basis, and it requires you to have a valid EPC, Energy Performance Certificate, with no outstanding recommendations for loft or cavity wall insulation. If your EPC says you need more insulation, you cannot get the grant until you spend your own money fixing the insulation. It is a barrier designed to stop you from claiming the money. We also need to talk about noise. A gas boiler is silent. It sits in a cupboard. A heat pump sits in your garden. It is a large box with a massive fan spinning. It makes a low-frequency hum. In the summer, it's fine, but in the winter, when it is working hard to sit, Extract heat from freezing air. It gets louder. If you live in a detached house in the countryside, fine. But if you live in a terraced street or a semi-detached estate, your heat pump is going to be 3 meters away from your neighbour's bedroom window. We are already seeing noise abatement orders being issued by councils against people who installed heat pumps that keep their neighbours awake. Imagine spending £15,000 on a heating system, only to be ordered by the council to turn it off at night because it is a statutory nuisance. You would be left freezing in your own bed. There is also the hot water issue. A combi boiler gives you unlimited hot water instantly. A heat pump heats a tank. Once that tank is empty, it takes a long time to reheat because the heat pump is a slow and steady device. If you have a family of 4 and everyone wants a shower in the morning, good luck. The last 2 people are having cold showers. You are downgrading your quality of life for a higher price. This is what they call progress. The installers themselves are fleeing the industry. I have spoken to heating engineers, guys who have installed gas boilers for 30 years. They are refusing to retrain for heat pumps. Why? Because the liability is too high. If they install a gas boiler, they know it works. If they install a heat pump and the customer complains it's cold, which happens 50% of the time in old houses, the installer gets blamed. They don't want the headache, so we have a massive shortage of qualified installers. The government wants 600,000 heat pumps a year. We currently install about 30,000. The math doesn't work. The workforce isn't there. The grid isn't ready. Speaking of the grid, let's look at the infrastructure. If everyone on your street switches to a heat pump, the local electricity substation will melt. A heat pump draws a significant current. In the winter between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. when everyone comes home, turns on the oven, charges the EV and the heat pump ramps up, the grid cannot cope. We are facing the prospect of load shedding or rationing, where smart meters turn off your heat pump remotely to save the grid. This is not conspiracy theory. This is contained in the Smart Systems and Flexibility Plan documents. They want the power to control your heating demand. With a gas boiler, you have gas in a pipe. It flows. You are independent. With a heat pump, you are at the mercy of the national grid and smart meter algorithms. But there is a secondary threat that is arguably more dangerous because it affects the value of your biggest asset, your home. We are entering the era of the unsellable house. Estate agents are already whispering about the brown discount. This is the opposite of a green premium. If you have a drafty Victorian terrace with an EPC rating of D or E and a 20-year-old gas boiler, buyers are starting to deduct the cost of the retrofit from their offer. They look at your house and think, I love the period features, but I know the government is going to force me to spend £30,000 on insulation and a heat pump in 5 years. So, they knock £30,000 off the asking price. Banks are fueling this fire. They have their own net zero targets. We are seeing the rise of green mortgages, where you get a cheaper interest rate if the house is energy efficient. Conversely, we are approaching a point where some lenders might refuse to lend on F or G rated properties because they are seen as stranded assets. If you cannot get a mortgage on a house, the value of that house effectively drops to zero for 90% of the market. You are left selling to cash buyers at a massive discount. The boiler ban is not just about heating. It is about the destruction of property equity for the middle class. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Hydrogen-ready boilers. You might have seen the adverts. Buy this new gas boiler. It is hydrogen-ready. It sounds like the perfect solution. You keep your gas pipes, you keep your radiators, and one day the gas company just switches the supply from natural gas to green hydrogen. Problem solved, right? Wrong. This is largely a marketing gimmick designed to keep you buying gas boilers. While the boiler might be ready, the infrastructure is not. Hydrogen is a much smaller molecule than natural gas. It leaks through seals that hold natural gas perfectly fine. To switch the UK grid to hydrogen, we would have to dig up thousands of miles of road to replace the iron mains pipes with plastic ones, which is happening, but slowly. We would have to replace every gas meter, and physically, producing green hydrogen is incredibly expensive and energy intensive. Most independent energy experts agree. Hydrogen will be used for heavy industry, shipping, and maybe planes. It is highly unlikely to be pumped into millions of residential homes for heating. It is too dangerous and too expensive. Do not bank your financial future on a hydrogen switchover that may never happen. So, if you can't rely on hydrogen and you don't want a heat pump, what can you do? You need to look for exemptions. The government legislation is strict, but physics is stricter. There are legitimate reasons why a property cannot have a heat pump. You need to document these now to protect yourself from future fines or forced upgrades. The Exemption Checklist. Exemption. Number 1. Space and noise constraints. A heat pump needs airflow. You cannot stick it in a cupboard. It needs to be outside, usually at least 1 metre away from the property boundary to comply with permitted development rights. Furthermore, it must pass a noise assessment, MCS 020. If you live in a dense terrace street or a flat, it is often mathematically impossible to install a heat pump without violating noise regulations regarding your neighbour's window. If you can prove that installing one would be illegal under noise laws, you are exempt. Get a survey done? Keep that piece of paper. Exemption number 2. Grid constraints. This is a big one. Most UK homes have a single-phase electricity supply with a main fuse of 60 or 80 amps. If you have an electric shower, an induction hob, and an electric vehicle charger, adding a heat pump might overload your supply. You would need to upgrade to a 3-phase supply. This can cost thousands of pounds and involves the distribution network operator, DNO, digging up the street. If the DNO refuses to upgrade your supply, which they can do if the local substation is at capacity, you cannot have a heat pump. That refusal letter is your get out of jail free card. Exemption number 3. Listed buildings and conservation areas. If you live in a Grade 2 listed building, you cannot just drill holes through the walls or stick a modern box in the garden. You need listed building consent. Often, CE's conservation styrmises. Officers will refuse permission for double glazing or external insulation because it ruins the character of the building. Without insulation, a heat pump doesn't work. Therefore, heritage properties create a catch-22 that currently protects you from the mandate. Now, let's talk about the hybrid solution. This is the secret option that the industry doesn't market well because it's complex. But it is the smartest move for most British homes right now. A hybrid system keeps your gas boiler. You do not rip it out. You install a small, low-power heat pump alongside it. Here is the magic. You install a smart controller. This controller looks at the electricity price and the outside temperature. When it is mild outside, say 10 degrees, and electricity is cheap, the heat pump runs efficiently and warms your house. When it gets freezing cold, -2 degrees, or electricity prices spike, the system automatically switches to the gas boiler. The boiler provides the heavy lifting-ons, the coldest days, boosting the temperature so you stay warm. Why is this brilliant? You don't need to resize your radiators because the gas boiler takes over when high temperatures are needed. You don't need to spend £20,000 on insulation immediately. You have a backup. If the heat pump breaks, you don't freeze. It reduces your gas usage by 60 or 70%, which keeps the green lobbyists happy, but protects your wallet from the spark gap. If you are forced to upgrade, ask your installer specifically for a bivalent or hybrid setup. If they say, "We don't do those," find another installer. They are just being lazy. We also need to mention biomass, wood pellet boilers. These are a valid renewable alternative, especially for country homes. However, be very careful. As we discussed in my previous video, the government is cracking down on particulate matter pollution. While a biomass boiler is technically renewable, carbon neutral, it produces smoke. If you live in a city smoke control area, this might not be an option. But for rural properties off the gas grid, biomass is often superior to a heat pump because it produces high-temperature heat that works with old radiators. Finally, what is the political reality? Will this be reversed? There is a general election looming, or recently passed, depending on when you watch this. Both major parties are committed to net zero. The timelines might shift slightly. They might delay the ban from 2020 to 2030, but the direction of travel is set. The civil service is driving this. The building regulations are driving this. Do not assume a new Prime Minister will save you. You must take action to protect your own home. Your action plan: insulate first. Before you spend a penny on heating, spend money on draft-proofing. Seal the windows. Insulate the loft. The cheapest energy is the energy you don't use. Don't panic buy. Do not rip out a working gas boiler just because you are scared of the ban. Keep your current boiler running as long as humanly possible. The technology for heat pumps is improving every year. A heat pump bought in 2030 will be quieter, smaller, and more efficient than one bought in 2026. Let the early adopters pay the beta tester tax. Get your EPC sorted. If your EPC is wrong, and many are, get a new assessment. A bad EPC can devalue your home and block you from access to grants. Check your fuse. Go to your meter cupboard, look at the main fuse. If it says 60A, you likely need an upgrade before you can add an EV or heat pump. Requesting this upgrade from your energy provider is often free now, but might become chargeable later. Get in the queue. The war on the boiler is real. It is a transfer of wealth from homeowners to energy companies and manufacturers. They want you to pay for the infrastructure upgrades. They want you to pay for the transition. Refuse to be a victim. Arm yourself with knowledge, check your exemptions, and do not let a salesman bully you into a system that leaves you cold and broke. I want to hear from you. Have you had a quote for a heat pump? Was it £15,000? Did the installer tell you to change your radiators? Or do you have a heat pump and actually love it? Let me know in the comments below. We need real-world stories to counter the government propaganda. And if this video saved you from making a huge financial mistake, please hit that like button. It helps us expose these schemes to more people. Make sure you are subscribed and have the bell turned on. In my next video, I am going to tackle the council tax bankruptcy, why councils like Birmingham and Nottingham are effectively bankrupt, and why they are planning to hike your council tax by up to 20% to pay for their mistakes. You cannot afford to miss that. Until then, stay warm, keep your boiler serviced, and I will see you in the next one.